Gambling in video games is one of the hottest topics in the industry right now. The primary application of this concept is randomized loot boxes, and the regulatory world is already in a state of reaction to that one point of reference. But there's a new player on the scene taking the concept of gambling in video games to a whole new, and frankly, mind-blowingly predatory level. Grand Theft Auto 5 Online has decided, at what is likely the point of peak scrutiny regarding gambling in games, to add in a literal casino that accepts real-world money and offers games like blackjack, three-card poker, and more. There is no cash-out option to turn invested funds back into real-world currency, but the portal to input funds is on a fixed pay scale of dollars to chips, and that money is then tied to VIP features and actual mission content. Take-Two, Rockstar, and GTA 5 have lost their minds. This is not only tone-deaf, it is arrogant, but the problems go much further. The biggest issue coming to light is that the content goes against the existing gambling legislative framework in a lot of regions. In South Africa, Portugal, Jordan, Iceland, and many other countries as well, the content is denied client-side. This is for a variety of different reasons. In some regions, it conflicts with gambling law. In other areas, it has to do with religious contradictions. But regardless of why, the end result is consistent. Many players are barred from participating, but they are not being properly warned of that restriction. This isn't even new for Rockstar or Take-Two. More recently with Red Dead 2 Online, they initially launched a pay-to-win gold system that allowed players to skip the leveling grind and immediately buy or use powerful gear. However, when the community fought back and the system was changed, they didn't even bother to remove the buy now prompt that would trick players into spending real money for gold to buy the item now, with the leftover prompt from the pay-to-win system, which would then disappear, and they would be unable to use the item until sometimes dozens more hours of grinding had passed. They were even denied a refund when they reached out to customer support. The point is, these two games, Red Dead 2 Online and GTA 5 Online, bear striking similarities, and one of those similarities is a complete disregard for transparency or clear communication. If a portal can be opened that onboards user capital, they do not care if it is clearly articulated or properly laid out. The only goal is to get them spending, even if they are unknowingly spending for something they cannot even use. The players, that is. One of the upper echelon community members on Twitter shared with me a situation wherein their friend paid the $6 million for what appeared to be the penthouse apartment in the new Diamond DLC, but since the features were barred in their region, it was effectively an empty house. Now, in this case, they paid for it with money that had been earned in-game, but shark cards in GTA 5 Online range from around $20 to $100, with the $100 card giving $8 million. This means that the $6 million for this penthouse is equivalent in pricing, should you buy the funds with real-world currency, that is, to a $60 full-price game. Actually, it is more expensive than that, and there is no doubt that a chunk of players purchased shark cards to unlock this penthouse, not knowing it did not contain the features. Imagine buying a $60 AAA game, actually better yet and also more accurate I might add, imagine buying a deluxe version of that same game, but you get the box and there is literally no disc. Nowhere on the box did it say, sorry, this game isn't available in your region, but we will still let you pay us for it. And you, without any clue as to what is really going on, paid the money and are then denied a refund. GTA 5 Online has lost its damn mind, and this isn't even the full scope of the issues. Keep in mind I am not an expert on the game itself in terms of historical balancing or mechanical details, but despite the restriction on trading funds between players, there are ways around that as far as I know. This is true of almost any game when it comes to player restrictions. That's just what players do. They find ways around these barriers, and in a tightly controlled economy of single point buying, that's not really an issue, but the Diamond Casino has changed that. If all real-world to in-game dollar conversions follow the standard format of shark cards, that creates no room for peer-to-peer profitability. Since player financial trading is disabled, mostly, that means it is a single point of entry with no exit. As an easy example, you aren't going to be able to buy a $100 shark card and then sell that account or those funds to another player for more than you paid. I mean, maybe it's possible and has happened before, but it's not a common thing. With the introduction of RNG-based gambling with a tied ratio to in-game dollars, that can easily change. Players can accumulate in-game funds very rapidly and at a much lower cost than traditional shark cards, while also bypassing the time restriction of grinding through traditional in-game activities. This means that a fixed price point economy becomes a flexible one, which was already true to a certain degree, I guess, but it's taken to an entirely new level by the introduction of gambling. Players can easily now onboard a new character, get to the point where they can engage in the casino systems, accumulate enough cash to be sold at a subversive price to what is currently offered by the actual shark cards, even despite the fact that modifications to the software will result in an account ban, and ultimately reap a profit because of it. Now we have to get into the problem of RTP, or return to player. RTP is a tricky subject because in traditional gambling, it is a regulated phenomenon. In Las Vegas, the mandated minimum RTP is 75%. In other parts of the world, it can be higher or lower, but sticking with Las Vegas, for example, we can see that the actual RTP in that area is far higher. This is a function of competition. The minimum RTP is there to protect players from predatory practices. Well, I guess more predatory practices at least. But Vegas casinos are competing for player time and interest, so they've incrementally raised that to what is now in the low 90s, almost across the board. Players will spend money at the establishment where they feel like they win the most, and 10% of something is better than 25% of nothing. The issue, however, is that video games are not subjected to the same RTP standards as traditional gambling. A great example is CSGO, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and I discussed this during an analysis of the shadow economy surrounding skin gambling from crates. It turns out, thanks to an excellent analysis from Jeremy Ray, a writer for Fandom, that CSGO danger cases have an RTP that is almost always substantially lower than the mandated RTP minimum seen for official gambling. For the new Diamond Casino, I'm not sure what the actual RTP is, and I damn sure will not be spending enough money to find out, but since the game is not held to the same standards as traditional gambling, while also accessing an audience that legally includes those over the age of 18 rather than 21, I would be completely baffled if it held anything short of a massively reduced and downright predatory RTP, because their need to remain competitive with other casinos and venues is non-existent. Despite all of these concerns, you have sites like Kotaku praising the underage, unregulated casino. GTA's online new casino is great, even if you aren't rich. I almost gag when I read that. This is what games media is becoming. Blind corporate shilling with no regard for the intricacies of a monetization scheme, even when those details are readily apparent and massively damaging. I have a very hard time drawing correlations between in-game activities and real-world behavior, but gambling is one that breaches that barrier. Online gambling for real money is just as addictive as physical analog methods, and gambling in a video game, especially when that money is also a function of real-world currency, despite no officially sanctioned cash-out option existing, is not as abstract as seeing violence in games or committing a crime in them. It is a one-to-one exact replica and functionally identical activity to legitimate gambling. From top to bottom, the Diamond Casino is a horror show. Not only does it enter the scene right in the eye of the hurricane with no regard for current regulatory scrutiny, it also ties real-world cash to in-game activities while tricking players into buying things that they don't even get after paying, and also opens the door for a complex and admittedly roundabout but still all too real peer-to-peer shadow economy of gambling-driven profiteering. All of this while it exists in the gray area between video game and reality without being held to account regarding the existing gambling regulation in various regions, the mandated RTP minimums, and the typical age restrictions that similar facilities adhere to. Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick is famously quoted for stating that he believes GTA 5 Online is under-monetizing its users, at least on a per-user basis, or whatever the keyword drivel is there. And there are not an overabundance of ways to increase per-user spending when it comes to a game that is already the most profitable single entertainment product in history. One of the ways to do it is unregulated, unrestricted, unaccountable gambling with a disregard for even properly advertising to your customers if they will even receive what they are buying. At this point, I want to take a minute to address a recent situation on YouTube that affects the channel, because this subject matter is actually rather adult, I guess. For a long time, I was pretty savvy with what could and could not be said, and the guidelines for what does and does not result in demonetization seemed almost somewhat reasonable. That has changed. My latest video, I had to censor way too many words just because they might be offensive or adult. I don't even really know, but the result was that it destroyed the content. I won't be doing that again. If you see ads on the video, that's great. If you don't, it might be because YouTube has decided that they want to kill my channel's profitability, which is annoying, but also not a really cataclysmic event at all. However, to diverge fully from the now unpredictably constricting algorithm, that means stuff like Patreon, merch sales, memberships, and various other methods. So be forewarned, I will be shouting those out at the end of videos a bit more often from here on out. I'm not sure if the word casino or gambling will be enough to ding me as unsafe for advertisers. I really have no clue, but censoring that out of fear is a step in the wrong direction, so it's not even worth really attempting. Rockstar, Take-Two Interactive, and GTA 5 Online are off the deep end. The new Diamond Casino, despite what some trash-tier journalists might say, is a predatory construction which has no rightful place in a full-price video game, especially one that does not conform to any of the existing regulatory gambling laws that are established for a very good reason. But that's it for today. If you want to support, check out the links down below. There's Patreon, merch, blah, blah, blah. I already talked about them earlier. I'll cut it there and stop rambling. Thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.